Washburn was unable to do that, and it became quite clear that he had nothing to hang his hat on. Nonetheless, the judge actually even stated, I believe that I do have this authority, and I'm very confident in my authority, but since you raised the concerns, I'm going to hold off on issuing such orders until on Monday at 8:30 a.m., at which time I will be in Humboldt County. So from all indications that we have, we will have an order to show cause for both preliminary injunction and contempt, but at this point we have yet another series of delays.
Did Pacific Lumber bring up any other concerns besides the fact that the hearing was in Mendocino County?
They brought some other concerns previous to that. They basically argued why they don't believe that their timber harvest plans that have already been approved, why they apply to the stay, and basically trying to give their interpretation of the order that does not include such logging plans under the order. And they also were claiming that their timber harvest plans do not rely on the permits that are being challenged in the case, meaning the sustained yield plan and the incidental take permits to kill endangered species and the ownership-wide streambed alteration permit. And it's just a complete fallacy because each and every one of these timber harvest plans wholly relies on one or all of these permits. And in fact, if you request an administrative record of any of these timber harvest plans, then they're not only going to give you a copy of the timber harvest plan and the California Department of Forestry's official response and other documents related to that, but they're also going to give you the sustained yield plan, the incidental take permits, and so forth, because they are so integrally related. And so they really don't have an argument there, but it was of concern to the judge, and he did ask for additional evidence to show that indeed each one of their 134 timber harvest plans that are active right now, that each of one of those do in fact rely on these permits in question.
Would it be difficult to provide that kind of proof for the judge?
Not at all, and in fact we have already provided a declaration from one of our staff members that shows, it has examples of more than 30 different timber harvest plans that show exactly how they relate and rely to the sustained yield plan, etc. And so we provided different pages of the timber harvest plan and the official responses from CDF that clearly show that they do rely on these permits. So we're confident that we will have absolutely no problem at all in providing that evidence to the judge, but it's just a shame that something that is should be such a non-issue is holding us up even further, because Pacific Lumber has even acknowledged in their court filings that their timber harvest plans do rely on this SYP when that benefits their arguments. But then when it seems like it's going to be to the detriment of their arguments, then they conveniently switch sides, and it's something that we just constantly have seen in this case.
Now, Alicia, this is the first time you've sat in on this particular issue. What did it seem like to you?
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to pipe up about, was that I haven't been coming to these hearings, and I've been obviously involved in a different legal venue in federal court, and my biggest impression, it was a very unconventional legal proceeding, because we were in this tiny little room. The judge was sitting there in a sweater and slacks. He didn't have a robe on. He actually was sitting in a chair next to people. There were two tables, and Epic's lawyers were at one table, and then CDF, Pacific Lumber, and Department of Fish and Game had attorneys at the other table. Cynthia and another woman from Epic were the only other people allowed in besides me. Somehow I slipped in there, lots. Well, I'm sitting there thinking about, every dollar that he's talking about is a tree, is part of a forest, is a living ecosystem. And the language that they're using and the circular reasoning that they're using, my favorite one was when Epic attorney Sharon Duggan said, first of all, they're telling you that they don't know what the judge's order even means. And in the next breath, they're telling you how the judge's order is going to impact them in all of these horrible ways. So which is it? Do they understand think it's going to impact them horribly, or do they not know what it means? I mean, and it just kept going like that. At the moment when the PL raised their bogus claim about the judge not having authority because he was in Mendocino and not Humboldt, the judge literally said, well, what is the authority here? Do you have any law? And he said, well, actually, Your Honor, I'm speaking from ignorance. That ignorance is my only authority here, and the judge still took it. I couldn't believe how much the judge was just willing to basically play along with Pacific Lumber and California Department of Forestry in this just totally illogical thing.
What's your estimation now, either Cynthia or Alicia, on whether or not the next time the hearing goes forward, that's on 8:30 on Monday, this contempt order will come down?
Well, it seems pretty obvious that the judge is going to sign an order to show cause both for a preliminary injunction and for contempt, but that just means that he's scheduling a preliminary injunction hearing and setting up a schedule by which each side is going to submit their arguments. And he did say he was going to set that preliminary injunction hearing for the 9th of December. So, I think the most important thing is that Pacific Lumber is logging over 1 million board feet a day out of these forests. They're operating on, in what Epic and it seems pretty clear, is in contempt of the judge's stay. So they're taking out 1 million board feet a day, right? Every day that the PL can delay this is 1 million more board feet. So putting it off until Monday, 4 million more board feet, right? Putting off this hearing until the 9th is another week and a half, 2 weeks of logging that's going to happen out there. Now, one interesting thing that came up after the hearing as we were talking about it was that when it comes down to Pacific Lumber being found in contempt of the judge's order, if that happens, they may be liable for every day of logging. There may be severe penalties for every day that this logging continues in defiance of the judge's ruling. So they're not really in a good place, as far as what their risks of liability are. They could have to pay back this 1 million board feet worth of profit that they're making a day, plus penalties. So, and I have to say, it wasn't really clear, other than what the judge seemed to be taking just outrageous behavior from Pacific Lumber, but it also it seems kind of like he was really considering holding them in contempt, and really considering putting into place a preliminary injunction. So it remains to be seen.
And that was Alicia Littletree. Also, we spoke with Cynthia Elkins of Epic. Now, the Pacific Lumber Company told KMUD News on this Thursday that they're not going to have any comment on this issue until after the contempt hearing on the 9th of December, and that's 3 weeks away. And KMUD News learned that a number of freshwater and Elk River residents were quite upset because they were not allowed into the hearing in Ukiah. We will, of course, keep you posted.